I may regret this decision, but who knows? Let's see. Am I following you?
Yeah, if you can, because it's in a lock-up and it's like in the back of beyond.
Where on earth are we going? Hello everyone, welcome to another video. Please don't be mad at me. I can feel the comment section already. I can feel you're all shouting at the screen, telling me off for having another project. But in my defense, it needed saving. It's a beautiful bike. I absolutely love it. It needed a new home and it has found one and it's now in my workshop. Mikey at MJY Pattern Makers is well underway with modifying the half wheel patterns, but he's going to need a week or two to do that. Then it goes to the foundry and joins the queue to go into actually be cast. So there's going to be a few weeks before we see an actual casting turn up at the workshop. So what better distraction than a very late 49 or 1950 Ariel Red Hunter 500cc. It's a British bike, single cylinder. It's the biggest bike I've actually had here, my little Tiger's 350. So that's going to be interesting. The lovely gentleman in the video, his family member had a motorbike shop doing repairs and servicing and sales his whole life. Bought and sold bikes. Well, I think bought bikes more than sold bikes. But everything that he took in as part exchange, anything that was a bit special, went down into the basement. In the end, there was about 40 bikes, maybe more, crammed full in this basement. The elderly gentleman that ran the business is now sadly I think he's in a care home. He's got dementia, bless him. And the family are clearing the shop and the building out the back. There's lots of bits where they're basically clearing through the estate and selling off all of the bikes. They've sold all of the other bikes, mopeds, scooters. There were Vespas down there, really old Triumphs. There's Norton down there. They've all gone. This area was just the last one sitting in there. All the other bikes down there had tax discs on them that were roughly around the 60s, 64, 68, roughly. So I think this bike has been hidden away in the basement of that motorbike shop since the 60s, which is mad. The Speedo, I think it's got 6,000 miles on it, pretty much untouched. All the parts are there. I'm missing the headlight and I'm missing the battery. There's a couple of little bits, but all the parts are original. All the bits are correct. It's a bit of a gem. I'm a bit of a sucker for original paint and anything like this, sort of patina. The front tyre has sadly given up. There's a little switch from there, the headlight switch missing, and the amp gauge on the front above the headlight is missing. But what is there is beautiful. I'm so chuffed. One thing is for sure, this bike is staying as original as possible. I am not going down the electronic ignition route again. After the nightmare that I had with the Tiger, this has got a magneto, which is new to me. So that's going to be an interesting journey for me, figuring those out, learning about magnetos. It's probably going to need rebuilding. I do want to give it a wash because it's filthy at the moment and I need to do a lot of work to the wiring, the electrics, and everything's grubby. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is wheel it outside, spray some degreaser over it all, and give it a good pressure wash and a good clean, a bit of a scrub down. The little Ariel can have its first bath since the 60s. The best news is brother Dan is around and hopefully I'm trying to encourage him to come up to help me, to give me a hand with the wiring. I need to remove all the grease and dirt and oil from all the bike so we can actually see what we're working with. So brother Dan has got some fighting chance of actually seeing what colour each wire is. The degreaser that I'm using is actually from Worth, believe it or not, industrial strength degreaser. So I've sprayed that on, let it sit, and then I've gone round and spent some time scrubbing it with a paintbrush. I'm being quite cautious and quite gentle. There's obviously areas that I'm going to miss, and this is going to take time as I progress through to actually get to all the little nooks and crannies and bits, but this is just an initial degrease and a bit of a clean before we start delving deeper. I've not even looked to see if this engine is seized up. I'm assuming it probably is. I'm just going to let that degreaser sit there, give it a little bit more of a scrub and rinse that off. And then maybe we'll have a look and see if the engine turns over. I'll try and get the spark plug out, see what's happening in there. I absolutely love the patina that the tank has got. It looks beautiful, but it's a bit too rusty for my liking. So I'm wondering if I can try and remove some of the rust but leave some of the character. I don't know. Once it's all washed off and dried, I'll get it back in the workshop and then we can have a look and see if the engine turns over. The thing that's making me nervous is, why was it taken off the road? There's a reason why somebody wanted to part exchange this bike. And is that because it broke? is the engine locked up and seized up? Did the gearbox explode? Who knows what happened? Maybe it just was old and they wanted a new bike. But either way, this engine has not turned in a very long time. So I feel like that's probably the place to start. Just try with a kickstart and see if it turns over very cautiously. It could kick over and roll and turn over nicely. It could be stuck and seized but a little bit, but we can free it up. Or it could be completely locked up and need rebuilding. There's only one way to find out. No. No, nothing. Okay. Oh, hang on. The kickstart moved ever so slightly, which is brilliant news. So I'm going to take the spark plug out and spray at least some oil or some penetrant or something in the combustion chamber, because if there is even the slightest hint of rust or anything in there, I don't want to be dragging that up and down and causing more damage. Oh, that's undoing. That's a good sign. That bit of movement on the kickstart lever might have been slight false hope. I think that's just all the backlash from the actual gear and not the actual engine starting to turn over. I've used WD-40's penetrant, sprayed a load of that in there. So that is now in the combustion chamber, doing its thing, soaking where all the piston rings and the inside of that bore. Hopefully it's going to do something. I've put some engine oil in there as well. That might do something. I think I'm going to try and take the tank off because I need to clean the inside of the tank because it's all rusty. There's loads of cables running from the bars down into under the tank, and then they just disappear and I can't tell what goes where. And it would just be quite handy to get the tank out the way. So I'm going to see how possible that is. Unusually, the speedo is in the fuel tank. The speedo, the oil pressure gauge, and a little light, which is missing, are all in this little sort of instrument cluster on the top of the tank. I've never worked on one of these before, so I'm completely in the dark. But hey, it's only nuts and bolts. How hard can it be? There's all the cables. Goodness me. This bulb. Oh, where on earth is that supposed to go? This little adjuster goes through the tank, comes out the bottom so you can get to it to reset the little trip at the bottom. Love that. Obviously the glass is broken. That needs some help. I'm not bothered about that at the moment. Who cares? Let me carry on trying to get this tank removed. Little hints of original paint there. It's nice to see. I've got the tank removed, so at least now I can actually track all the cables and wires and levers and see where everything's going and what it's doing, which is good. It has revealed a lot more dirt and grease, which I did not get earlier, so I might have to wheel it back outside tomorrow and give it another bit of a clean up. Still none the wiser why it's seized up, so I'm going to try and take this side cover off and just start taking cover plates off to see cautiously primary drive gears and chains and see if anything looks like I should stop forcing it. I'm not resorting to heat or anything drastic yet. The clutch. The clutch cable is disconnected on the other side, so I wonder why somebody's disconnected it. I've got a feeling the clutch might be stuck. Right, so this is the clutch cable, and I'm just dripping some oil down into it to try to get things moving again. When you pull the clutch lever up there, the cable goes through there, round there, to here, and then it pulls this lever. As you pull the clutch cable in, it pushes that lever in, which pushes this little adjuster with a ball in the end into the gearbox. There's a rod in there that goes to the clutch on the other side, and that rod pushes the clutch plates and separates them from the rest of the gearbox. That's what should be happening, but unfortunately everything is stuck. The cable, the inner cable stuck in the outer cable, and the actual, seems like either the rod or the clutch plates are stuck together. That's the clutch cable reconnected to the lever at both ends, the gearbox end and the lever end, and it's working. So, if I try and kickstart the engine, it goes that far, then it's locked. It won't move any more than that. If I pull the clutch, watch the discs, they move out. With the clutch pulled in, then I kickstart. Ah, there we go, perfect. With a bang, there you go. But then as soon as I let the clutch out, it won't move. That is basically telling me that the kickstart, the gearbox end is okay. Well, not okay, but at least free. And the engine is the problem, because with the clutch lever out, that links the two, which means the kickstart is trying to turn the engine. I think it's all pointing towards the engine. So I'm going to spray some more penetrant in there, let that soak. Maybe I'll try and warm it up a little bit. It's about 7 o'clock in the evening now, so I should probably spray as much of this penetrant in there as I can, and then I'll leave it to soak overnight, and I'll see you in the morning. We will try and get this engine at least turning over. Day 2, here we go. It is -5 outside. It is freezing cold, but we are here and we're going to carry on working with the little Ariel. I put some oil in the combustion chamber through the spark plug hole. I've got the heat lamp on it now. I'm trying to warm it up, expand it a tiny bit and break that rusty bond, assuming the rings stuck to the bore is the problem and it's not the bottom end. Let's try. I'll give it a kick now and try. Let me see if the soaking overnight has done anything at all. No. It was never going to be that straightforward, was it? Maybe I will break out the blowtorch and try and get some proper heat into this barrel. Hopefully that will free it up. The blowtorch has warmed up the barrel. It's just under 200 degrees, roughly, there or thereabouts. It's hot. It might not expand the barrel, it's not that hot, but if the piston rings are stuck to the bore, hopefully a little bit of heat mixed in with the oil and the penetrant that I've put in there is gonna free it up. But there's only one way to find out. Let's cautiously try and lean on that kickstart and see if there's any sign of movement. No, damn it. Heating up the barrel has not freed it up. I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do next, but the thing is, it could be the bottom end. It could be the crank, the big end, the rods. It could be anything in the internals of the engine. The bearings in there could be completely seized. It's obviously not had oil running through it for a long time. In the middle of heating up the barrel, I actually had a delivery, which is quite exciting. The first delivery for the new little Ariel, a new front tyre. I called the guys at Vintage Tyres yesterday evening and the new tyre has already turned up. I can't believe it. I thought it was going to be next week. So I've got now a new tyre, new inner tube and a new rim hoop for the like where the end of the spokes are, the little bit of rubber on the inside. Let's leave this barrel. Now I've warmed it up. You never know, heating that up might have made some voids somewhere that the oil can seep into before we get too depressed. Get the front wheel off, get it on the bench and see if I can change the tyre. I have got my tyre levers at the ready, but the last time I did this, I had John here helping me. So I've not done this on my own before. How hard can it be, hey? I've got the tyre removed and the old inner tube removed. The rim inside looks in really, really nice condition. With the rim all cleaned up, it's time to try and fit the new tyre. Now, this tyre is not my first choice. I don't love the tread pattern, but this rim is a 20-inch rim, and apparently they're hard to come by. Tyres for 20-inch rims are quite rare. I put a little bit of air in the inner tube, a little bit, just to hold its shape, to make sure that it doesn't get any creases and folds and twist and fold over on itself. It just helps it hold that sort of round shape. Once I've got one bead on the rim, you can put the inner tube in, feed that round, and then use the big tyre levers to try and pry the bead of the tyre over the rim. It starts off straightforward. The further round you get, the more the tyre has to stretch, the harder it gets. This was relatively straightforward and it's actually gone on really nicely. I've pumped it up and it's holding air really well. Before I can put this wheel back on the bike, the front brake, there's two brake shoes on like a brake plate, a backing plate. That all looks a little bit crusty and the lever for the front brake was completely seized previously. And they rely on these two springs that push the two shoes out to send the lever back, to push the cable back, to push the lever back. So I'm going to strip it all down, clean all the components, grease everything up, lubricate everything, and rebuild it. As if by magic, there we go. Everything took a little bit of freeing up, degreasing and cleaning, but it's all the original parts that are all going back in, which I'm quite pleased to say. It's all looking good. It's working really nicely. You can see, if I twist the lever on the back, you can see the shoes moving in and out. That is essentially what happens when you pull the lever. And that is now ready to put back on the bike. I've had the wheel bearings out, cleaned them all out, re-greased them all, packed it filled with grease, cleaned up the axle that runs through, polished that up. It's all looking good. Everything's really nice and it's going back on the bike. I will admit, yes, an extra pair of hands would have made that job a lot more straightforward. Fighting with this wheel and the axle and trying to line the fork legs up and everything was a bit of a struggle. It doesn't help that it's -4 degrees. It's absolutely freezing, but the axle runs through and fits from one, slides through from one side through both bearings and both fork legs. Then there's a pinch bolt on the left-hand fork leg, which holds that in position. The side project of fitting the front tyre and apparently rebuilding the front brake is complete. The lever is now snapping back really, really nicely. And if I spin the wheel and pull the lever, the wheel stops. Look at that. Perfect. Obviously there'll be some adjustments to make once the bike is up and running and actually on the road, but for now everything is performing as it should be. So that is the clutch freed up, the front brake freed up and working. Unfortunately, one thing we have not ticked off the list is freeing up the seized engine. It's had another good few hours to sit. I really want to, either one way or another, confirm whether it's locked up, it's seized, and we need to rebuild it, and then I'll take it out and have to start thinking about rebuilding it, which will be a massive blow. I'll be absolutely gutted. I really hope that's not the case. If we can get it freed up, there's a chance we can get it running. I can get it off its block and on its feet again, and let's try and kick it over. Let's see what happens. It moved. It has moved. The engine is turning over. That is absolutely brilliant. I am over the moon. I was convinced that the engine was locked up and we were going to have to take it apart, and then it was just going to escalate and spiral into a massive another build. Let me make a coffee and make a plan. Wendy, the engine's freed up. It's good. I know. If we can sort these three and put ticks on all three, then we can try and kick it over and see if it will run. The first job on the list is going to be to drain the old manky oil out of there. If there is any oil, it's going to be 60-year-old sludgy, tarry oil. The more times I kick it over, the more manky oil is going to be sucked through and potentially blocking all these oil galleries and causing problems. We need clean fuel mixed with air going into the engine. That means we need to clean out the tank because there's some rust and some sort of junk inside the tank. I don't want any of that going into the carb because it will block the jets and then block the carb and it won't work. The carb is probably going to be full of sludgy old fuel, so we need to have a look at that. Then the scary one, we need a spark, which means we need to deal with some electrics. We need to check the magneto, clean that up, have a look and make sure, check the points, clean the spark plug, see if that spark plug that I took out is actually any good, sort out an HT lead because I don't think I've actually got one at all at the moment, and then a couple of extra bonus jobs. Choke cable stuck, throttle, the actual twist grip is seized. And there's a lot of those jobs that I can do fairly straightforward myself, so I'm going to get straight onto them. And first up is going to be oil. Let's try and drain this oil tank. Right, now I've got the tank mostly drained. I'm taking off the feed and return pipes that go into the oil pump in the engine in there. I'm taking them off down here because I want to make sure that these hard lines are nice and clear so I can wash and flush those out as well as everything else. So I'm going to take the whole lot out as one. This tank looks beautiful. Obviously there's a few bolts to take off, the hoses to take off, and I'll take everything out and flush it out, but it's structurally beautiful, really nice, no rot, no rust. I've got no concerns about it leaking. It looks lovely. But for now, let's get this tank apart and soaking in some degreaser, and then we can have a look at the next job. That black sludgy slime that's coming out at the bottom of this tank all over my workbench is exactly what I did not want to be picking up and sucking and pushing through all the oil galleries in the engine. I just knocked over a pot of thinners and it's gone all over our list. You have to remember what was on there. Me trying to be organised, writing the list, and look what happens. I'm just coating it in our favourite. This stuff is so good. It's linseed oil based, but it dries like almost like a coating. It's so lovely to wipe over original paint, any bits of rust, and just leaves a lovely sheen. I use it all the time on anything that's bare metal or it's all sorts of things. I mix it in with my paint, the sign writing paints. This stuff is absolutely brilliant. I love using it, and it's perfect for something like this bike because, you know, that whole oily rag restoration sort of thing. This is the oil you want on your rag. Oil tank cleaned, rebuilt, put back together, but I did not install it because I got distracted. The carb was just asking for me to take it off and give it a good old clean out. It was on the list of things to do because fuel is something that's essential for the engine to run. It's full of sludge from old fuel and just dirt in there. It was all seized up, it was dirty. Now it's nice and clean. The carb is back on the bike. I've taken it apart, completely stripped it down, new fibre washers everywhere, cleaned it all through. Whilst I was there, I freed up the throttle. The twist grip was completely seized. Now that is nice and moving. The cables, all the original cables are now nice and free and moving. The choke lever is this one here, just to the left of the throttle. That is broken, sadly. I'm missing the kind of knob on the end of it, but I'm going to try and find a good used one. I've actually got this one working well enough as it is. It's just a bit sort of tricky to actually adjust, but that is the choke, which also goes to the carb. So that had to come off. The choke mechanism inside the carb had to be cleaned up. It was made basically just a whole lot of cleaning, degreasing, putting back together. So I didn't film it, but it's done. The only thing left to do on the list for fuel is the tank. That is another story. Whilst I've been working away on all the other components, I have poured an entire bottle of Evaporust into the tank, and every day that I've been coming in, I've been turning it over into a new position, flipping it over on its back, on its front, on its side, on one end, on the other end, and letting it soak for a day every time to try and neutralise and clean some of the rust that was inside the tank. It really wasn't bad at all, but it's looking even better now. From what I can work out, this red is original and the orange is newer, but I don't know exactly. There's red on the wheels that matches it. So it's had a bit of a life, it's been painted, and I'd like the orange. I'm going to try and keep it. I just don't like that really bad pitted rust. It makes me a little bit nervous. I'm going to try and I'm not going to remove it all, I'm just going to see what I can do with some wire wool, see if I can get the worst of the rust off, because I just don't want it getting any worse. Another thing that you might be able to help me with is I am missing this beautiful Ariel plaque on the side of the tank. I've got one, the other side is missing. It almost looks like it's enamel, like a brass plaque that's been enameled. If anyone's got a lovely old used one, I would love to put it on the other side of this tank. Can you get repro ones? Can you get new ones? I'd quite like an original one. If anyone out there has got one, please let me know. I've got the perfect home for it here. Leave me a message below or send me an email on the Ranelagh website. Thank you so much. You know, I love anything that looks like it's just been dragged out of a ditch, but I don't want this to get worse, and I think it's going to look a bit smarter. It will still be rusty. The chrome is not going to come up absolutely perfect. It's still going to be pitted. It's going to take a long time, but I think I can very carefully remove the worst of the rust and just show off a little bit of the beautiful tank, the original chrome. There's flecks of original old paint under there. Just done a little sample patch there. I hope you'll agree that it is worth doing. This is going to take quite a while. This is exactly how a straightforward job suddenly escalates and turns into another hour gone. This is the cover plate that I just took off the bottom of the engine. This is essentially the bottom of the sump, and then the oil pickup for the oil pump that goes to the bottom of this to suck the oil back into the oil tank, out of the engine back to the oil tank. There's a little mesh gauze. There's these tiny little feet that you sort of bend backwards to get this mesh in, like that. And of course, two of the feet have pretty much snapped off. So now I'm finding myself trying to solder tiny little metal feet back on into position, which are covered in oil, covered in dirt. It's not straightforward to solder. So I'll be here for a while now trying to get all 4 feet soldered back in place. I've got the gauze cleaned up. I've got the actual sump plate. I've got the sump plate all cleaned up. Once I get these feet soldered back in place, I'll be able to put the gauze back on, push the feet over to hold it in place, get it reinstalled on the bike. Then that's the oiling system done. It's not straightforward to solder, so I'll be here for a while now trying to get all 4 feet soldered back in place. I've got the gauze cleaned up. I've got the sump plate all cleaned up. Once I get these feet soldered back in place, I'll be able to put the gauze back on, push the feet over to hold it in place, get it reinstalled on the bike. Then that's the oiling system done. A little dab of Baker's Flux helps clean it, Get plenty of that on there. We're running out of jobs. The only thing left to do is electrical, which means we're gonna have to wait for Brother Dan. To be able to tick off the jobs properly, let's get the oil tank and the hoses and the pipes all reconnected, pop the tank back on, and we'll have a bike again. Tank is on. I've wheeled it outside just to see it out in the daylight. It's been a good few days work, but I hope you've enjoyed this sort of bumper episode. We've got quite a lot done. If you have, please give us a thumbs up. It makes a huge difference with the YouTube algorithms. We'd really appreciate it. Make sure you have subscribed to the channel so that you get a notification to let you know when the next video update comes out. If anybody has got an original Ariel sort of brass plaque to go on the tank, please get in touch. We've made a lot of progress. The bike is kicking over really nicely now. Problems, I can't get it into gear. So something's sticking in the gearbox, which is a potential problem. And I haven't dared check if there's a spark yet. So I think the next thing that we're gonna do is electrical. It's the only ingredient that we're missing on the list to see if that engine will run. That means we need Brother Dan and some parts. The parts are on order. They should be here in the next couple of days. As soon as they're here and I've made sure that I've got everything that I need, I'll try and get Brother Dan down. We'll see if we can get that magneto to come to life. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Any feedback, always welcome. Make sure you've subscribed and we'll see you next week, Sunday 5 p.m. Thank you. Bye-bye.